Up until now, I've been mainly covering anime that A, I've watched to completion, and B, are extremely well regarded. And I'd like to take a short break from doing those longer analysis videos and try something a little different here. Namely, so I can put out some quicker videos in between my longer ones, and also because I want to talk about some anime that I'm maybe not so into and why. Which brings us to Myriad Colors Phantom World. Myriad Colors Phantom World is an anime based off the light novel series written by Soshiro Hatano and takes place in the near future where humanity has evolved to the point where we can now see phantoms, metaphysical beings who come in a large variety of shapes and sizes, and usually have characteristics based in our society, such as appearing similar to physical objects, animals, or even people. The early trailer for this show showed a cute girl beating the shit out of large monsters with her bare hands, which, holy shit, could not be more up my alley. And when I saw that KyoAni were the studio behind it, I was excited indeed. It's unfortunate then that Phantom World falls short in a number of key areas, which is a shame because I do feel like there are some genuinely good ideas here, but the execution lacks any of the subtlety I've come to expect from Kyoto Animation, and the show in general just has a kind of lifeless, phoned-in quality that, try as I may, I just couldn't get past. The first warning sign for me here was the show's setting. Phantom World takes place in a school whose students all possess supernatural abilities and who must battle phantoms in order to improve their grades. Now, if you don't know why the magical battle school setting would bother me, here's a list of every anime from the last 12 months with an eerily similar concept. That's kind of a lot, right? Well, why would this be the case? It's either A stunning case of synchronicity where a large group of mangaka and light novel writers have all independently come to the conclusion that a magical battle school is the absolute best place for their story to unfold. Or B, magical battle schools are just in vogue right now and their overuse is yet another example of the anime industry cannibalizing itself as opposed to looking elsewhere for more original inspiration. But an unoriginal setting is by no means a deal breaker for a good show. Far more important are the characters and their underlying motives. And unfortunately, it's here that Phantom World really stumbles. The central problem isn't even an issue with the characters themselves, although they're by no means great, but more just the sheer number of central characters the show tries to squeeze into its first 3 episodes. By the end of the first episode, we have 4 central characters, by the end of the second we have 5, and by the third we have a suggested 6th. That's 6 characters by the end of the 3rd episode, 6 characters whose motives, personalities, and abilities all need to be established and explained, which unfortunately never really properly happens. Instead, Phantom World seems more focused in cramming as many anime girl archetypes in as it can, nearly as if it's worried that the viewer is going to get bored and walk away. Compare this with how Evangelion treats its characters. Remember when we got a staggering 7 episodes that consisted nearly entirely of the establishment of Shinji, Rei, and their relationship? How we got to know the subtleties of their personalities and the dynamic of how they saw each other? And then, when Asuka entered in episode 8, it was all the more impactful? Well, this is like the total opposite of that. The characters are all just kind of thrown together, and the only defining characteristic of their relationships is that they kind of like each other. Maybe it's unfair to compare Phantom World to what is essentially one of the most seminal and well-regarded anime of all time, but I'm not even comparing the writing or characterization here, just the fact that Eva respected its characters enough to give them room to breathe. The plot just kind of barrels forth, and even now I'm kind of at a loss at what the characters' motives are, other than a throwaway line in episode 1 about wanting to improve their grades. Very little information is provided about the society that the characters live in, and it makes it difficult to gauge just how unique these characters are in the context of the world as a whole. Like, are these powers they have unique, or can the population at large do them? Even what little characterization there is laughably half-hearted. Like in this scene in Haruhiko's room, where we get a single panning shot of some anime figures and Mai points and declares, "Hey, you're an otaku!" Why they couldn't have just given us some more subtle shots around his room and let us come to this conclusion ourselves is beyond me. Leading your audience to make their own assumption about a character is infinitely more interesting and rewarding an experience than having characters just point things out about each other. Take Kay from Gantz, for example. The gravure pin-up models around his apartment tell us that A, he lives without his parents, and B, probably doesn't have too many female friends. Not terribly intricate character writing by any means, but at least the show lets us get there ourselves, and it's all the more rewarding because of it. Worse still is when you realize that this one line is the sum total of Haruhiko's character development for the first couple of episodes. And where things become really galling is when you remember that this is Kyoto Animation we're dealing with. Kyo Ani are famous for two things: moe-ish character design, and more importantly, some of the most stunningly intricate and subtle character animation in the industry. Kyo Ani are the masters at hitting the viewer on a subconscious level. Every tiny hand movement and facial tic are used to give the viewer a window into how the character is feeling, and it nearly always works simply due to how much attention and effort the animators put into these subtle motions and gestures. The result leaves you with some of the best and most understated visual storytelling around, and makes a line like, "Hey, you're an otaku," all the more difficult to take. Other than this, we learn little else about Haruhiko. Like, I think he's meant to be the main character, but he has no real goals or ambition. He's just kind of there, with no real defining qualities at all. If I knew this guy in real life, I'd probably assume he was some kind of vapid psychopath, but I'm guessing that's not what the show is going for. The other characters don't fare much better. Koito is about as bland a Rei and Nami ripoff as you can imagine. Kurumi is a character for people who are into that kind of thing. Ruru is a bargain basement Shantae who could quite literally be edited out of the show and it wouldn't make any discernible difference. And I swear to God, I've been trying for like 20 minutes to think of something to say about Reina, but for the life of me, aside from the fact that she likes food, I can't recall a single thing about her. And finally there's Mai, and if there was one character that was going to win me over in this show, it's her. As stated previously, tough anime girls are totally my shit, but unfortunately, she never really advances past Tsundere Tropes 101 and is mainly relegated to the fanservice character. And honestly, I found the fanservice here pretty hard to take. Now, at this point, I'd just like to state that I have no inherent problem with fanservice. I both enjoy and understand the appeal of putting attractive characters in your show. But that said, I still feel there's a right and a wrong way to insert fan service into your show without compromising your world or characters. For anyone who watched my One Punch Man video, I like my fan service the same way I like my comedy, and that is well integrated into the plot and characters. My problem with Phantom World is that it wants to have its cake and eat it too. It highly sexualizes Mai while never actually acknowledging sexual themes within its worlds. None of the characters seem out and out attracted to each other, and yet the show doesn't hesitate to constantly depict Mai's body in an extremely sexualized way. It doesn't add to her character or the overall plot, it's just like a sly wink to the viewer, like the show is nudging us and saying, "Hey, check out how hot this chick is." And yeah, like, she's cute, but presenting her in this way just makes it feel like base level pandering. Like the show is so desperate for the viewer's approval that it'll go to any lengths possible, including skewing its character's sexuality well beyond the writing of the world. For examples of female characters whose sex appeal adds to rather than detracts from their character, check out Junko from Danganronpa, Shion from Psycho Pass, or Faye from Cowboy Bebop. These characters are all aware of their own sexuality and it's well integrated into them as characters, while not defining them as people. All that said, I do want to give the show its due where it deserves it. The general look and aesthetic of Phantom Worlds is for the most part pretty gorgeous. The show certainly knows how to handle its colours. The opening theme is fun in that Dance Dance Revolution kind of way, and despite all I've said about Mai, she's definitely the most likeable character here. And I did enjoy the little character development she got in episode 3. I also like that they were willing to draw her a lot more built than the other female characters. It's a small touch, but it does add to the idea that she's someone who gets in a lot of brawls. The show also has some decent ideas for its episode plots. I really liked the concept of materials being discarded by humanity coming back as demons, and some of the later episodes, like the surreal bunny house of episode 4, had some pretty cool concepts there, which I thought were really interesting. It's a shame the show never gives these ideas time to breathe, as I feel a little more restraint with the pacing would have helped things immeasurably. Lastly, the animation's beautiful at times, with some really fantastically done and energetic fight scenes. That said, however, I do feel that while the show looks great on an individual shot basis, there's something about the action scenes that never flows together the same way a great action scene should. We're given very little information about the characters' feelings or emotions during a fight, and at times it can be very difficult to tell where the characters are in relation to each other. Now at some point I think I'm just going to have to do a full-on video on fight scenes in anime because there's a lot to say there, but the positioning and proximity of characters in relation to another is crucial to making a believable and tense battle scene. Rather than this, however, it's like a group of very talented animators all worked on their shots in isolation, with no real direction given on how the separate shots need to work together into a cohesive edit. At this point, I could see one major counter-argument to my criticisms of Phantom World, and that would be that it's just a light and fun show, and my problems with it result from me taking it too seriously. And to that, I'd say two things. Firstly, I'm a guy who puts an excessive amount of my free time into writing and editing anime videos for the internet, so yeah, I take anime seriously. But if you've delved deep enough into anime YouTube to actually have found this channel, then I'm guessing you probably do too. Second, and more importantly, I take Phantom World about as seriously as I take Space Dandy or a Monogatari, Watamoe or Excel Saga. These are all light-hearted anime shows but with great writing and fun characters, and the idea that they're not meant to be taken seriously doesn't mean they're any less well written or directed than their more serious counterparts. The idea that a light-hearted comedy is any easier to write than a drama has always seemed like a bit of a fallacy to me, and Phantom World's breezy tone doesn't excuse its near non-existent plot or underwhelming characters. Even if you just really need to watch a supernatural high school based harem anime that relies heavily on fan service, then I'd certainly recommend any of the Bakemonogatari series over Phantom World. The characters are more interesting, the fights hit way harder, and hell, even the fan service is markedly better. Not that that show doesn't have its more questionable elements, because it most certainly does. But it's an infinitely more interesting experience than Phantom World, especially if you can get by how inaccessible it first seems. But hey, look, maybe I'm wrong on this one. This is just the first couple of episodes after all, and I've talked before on this channel about how 3 episodes isn't enough to get a good read on some shows. See my Hunter x Hunter video for more on that. Like, maybe there's something I'm not seeing here. Maybe Haruhiko's powers continue to increase and he does actually turn out to be some kind of evil sociopath, leading to a showdown between him and Mai, who are now forced to face each other as enemies, the lighter tone of earlier episodes serving as a tragic reminder to the way things were. Maybe something like this happens, but somehow I doubt it. The thing that really gets me here is that despite all my criticisms, I think this show turned out exactly how the creators intended. It's just kind of consumable vanilla nothing. You're not going to come out of this show any different than you went in. I can't really see anyone relating to the characters on a serious level, and the overarching story is practically non-existent. But the thing is that no amount of me breaking down the characters or criticizing the plot structure is going to stop the inevitable Mai scale figure selling a metric shit ton. But that's also why I wanted to do this video. I feel this kind of half-assed approach to writing in anime has become commonplace. The makers of Phantom World know they don't have to try to create interesting scenarios or original characters. They're aware that they just need to animate a harem of cute girls clumsily tripping over some half-assed male protagonist, and then sit back and watch the money print itself. And look, I'm not above watching trash. I've watched and enjoyed way more Fairy Tail than any self-respecting anime fan should, but at the same time, it's hard not to watch lackluster light novel adaptations like Phantom World consistently dominate the most popular list on Crunchyroll, while shows like Katanagatari fade into relative obscurity. The message here, my friends, isn't that consuming trash anime is bad, far from it, but I just think that in a case like Phantom World, you should ask for more from your trash. And guys, that's once again gonna do it. Again, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who commented, liked and subscribed to the channel, and if you're a fan of my longer analysis videos, don't worry, I've got something pretty special planned for next time. In the meantime, you can follow me over on Twitter or catch me on the Let's Fight a Boss podcast. Guys, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.